Hi folks, this is Andrew from MADMAN Review, and today we want to discuss 6 cartridges for handguns that are all on their way out. They had their day and fan base and lost both or are about to lose them, so they'll be obsolete soon, if not already. Now, some of you might think of that as painful, but rest assured, before these 6 that we discuss today, there have been other handgun cartridges that have found their way already. There have been other handgun cartridges that have found that way already. There are many reasons for this. Some did not make it to a status of being famous and stayed unloved for their whole life. Others were just overtaken by a competitor. And yet others were an answer to a question no one asked. Some were just right out of a bad idea and are neither liked nor missed. The .40 Smith & Wesson. Designed by the FBI, this cartridge has been traded in for 9mm. How come? The 1986 shootout in Miami left the FBI with the feeling that their rounds were not up to the task. So, they did the next best thing. They sealed their power up a notch and went for 10mm. However, 10mm is a pretty strong round, making it a hard hitter, but also hard to hit with. Something that had to change. And the result was a 10mm special FBI load that was just weaker than the normal 10mm. With less powder, it could be stuffed into a short cartridge, and the .40 Smith & Wesson was born. Basically a 10mm caliber and a 9mm cartridge length. The .40 cal round allowed for a magazine capacity similar to a 9mm and hitting power since to a .45 ACP. A new love began, and the FBI embraced the round with all it had to offer. Police agencies soon followed suit, and the cartridge spread over the whole country. What is good for law enforcement cannot be bad for civilians trying to save their bacon, and soon enough, they also followed the trend. As with so many relationships before, they started in a storm, ended in disappointment. The round was again a hard hitter, but still hard to hit with. Also, it costs more. This resulted in more expensive range sessions, and more of these range sessions making it even more expensive just to learn to get the fiery beast on target. At the same time, while people discovered the downsides of the .40 Smith & Wesson, 9mm managed to man up. New developments allowed it to hit almost as hard, at least that's what it was being said. All the while, the recoil and the cost of 9mm is less, making it easier to shoot, requiring less training and making each range session more affordable. You do not need to be a professor to see the writing on the wall. While .40 Smith & Wesson is declining, 9mm and 10mm are on the rise, and soon the little FBI caliber in the middle between both will be a thing of the past. The .45 GAP. Some Glock engineers got the idea to repeat the project of the .40 Smith & Wesson in their own way. However, while the .40 Smith & Wesson mated the bullet of a 10mm with the case length of a 9mm, the Glock engineers wanted to make a .45 auto bullet with a 9mm case. It should also use a small pistol primer and produce the same pressure of a .45 Auto Plus P. That is 23,000 psi. The goal was to offer the performance of the bigger round out of a pistol with the grip size of the smaller round. The idea was practically doomed from the start, as the GAP was meant to do what the .40 Smith & Wesson already did. While there were some law enforcement agencies that could not resist the charm of a Glock cartridge and a Glock gun, many others could. Besides these few law enforcement agencies, the average shooter could not care less, so that today, if you ask for a .45 GAP, everyone will correct you and tell you it's called a .45 ACP. The .41 Magnum. Now, you might think that the .40 Smith & Wesson is the first example of a big caliber mated with a small one to have a nice compromise between both, but you would be wrong. The .41 Magnum is another example of such an attempt made in 1964. The difference here is that the FBI asked for the .40 Smith & Wesson, but no one asked for the .41 Magnum. It's like the .45 GAP, the answer to a question nobody asked, the solution to a problem nobody had. Back in those days, revolvers were the go-to handgun for law enforcement agencies. There was the .38 Special, the hero of old days, and the parent for the .357 Magnum. Well, some thought the .38 Special might not be up to the task, so let's switch to .357. Others wanted to go a step further. They wanted more power than the .357 Magnum and went the whole way up to the .44 Magnum. Granted, a .357 Magnum beats a 9mm any day even that bad. That a good revolver in .357 Magnum gets more feed per second and energy foot-pounds for its round than a 9mm shot from a pistol caliber carbine, so the switch to 9mm makes no sense. But that's another story. What we look at here is a good old 9mm is not enough, and 10mm is too much story. Just before the time and the iteration, the .357 Magnum is not enough, but .44 Magnum is overdoing it. Especially the recoil might just be too much for a lot of shooters. The basic idea was to give law enforcement a round that is stronger than the .357 Magnum, but comes with less recoil than the .44 Magnum. Today, that seems to have almost no appeal to anyone, but in its days, a round was even supported by the great Elmer Keith. However, the effort was in vain. Advertised as a super hunter cartridge, most hunters were not impressed, and law enforcement was mostly not convinced either. It was no surprise that also the shooter community thought that there was no problem to begin with and just did not care about the new round. Today, there is a great variety of calibers and rounds available that offer similar or better performance for less recoil. This gives the .41 Magnum a one-way ticket to extinction. Even the followers of Elmer Keith often prefer the easier-to-shoot .357 Magnum or the harder-hitting .44 Magnum. The .32 H&R Magnum. The .32 H&R Magnum is a member of the .32 caliber family revolver cartridges that include also the .32 short, .32 long, and .327 Federal Magnum. And that's exactly the problem. Normally the term Magnum refers to the biggest of the family. We can see that, for example, with the .38 Special Plus P, and .357 Magnum. Here, the .357 Magnum is the biggest of the bunch. However, the .32 H&R Magnum is not the biggest of the .32 family of cartridges. Originally, the .32 H&R Magnum was introduced in 1982. It provides more power than the .22 long rifle and .22 Magnum. It does so without requiring a larger revolver. However, the power was still not considered as big enough, so it was soon eclipsed by the .327 Federal Magnum. This came not least because the increase of power of the .32 H&R Magnum was still not seen as enough, while the .327 Federal Magnum is meant to compete with the .357 Magnum. Looking at the cartridges, it became very fast and clear that the .32 H&R Magnum shoots at 85 grain bullet with a speed of 1,100 feet per second and generates 220 foot-pounds of energy out of a typical revolver for the caliber. Compared that, the common .327 Federal Magnum rounds brings it up to 620 foot-pounds of energy. This dwarfs the .32 H&R Magnum and propels it into the range of the .357 Magnum, which brings it to common energy levels between 500 and 800 foot-pounds. The .32 ACP. Some want to place the .32 ACP into the family of .32 caliber cartridges, but here we must make a difference. While the other .32 caliber cartridges that we just talked about are for revolvers, .32 ACP is for auto loaders. Some .32 caliber enthusiasts will tell you that you can shoot .32 ACP out of a .32 revolver, but this is not perfectly safe, while doable with a certain risk. The cartridge was introduced in 1899, and at that time well accepted. Since that time, there have been plenty of handguns chambering it, and it was especially popular in Europe. It was also the cartridge Adolf Hitler used for his suicide. However, as with the .32 H&R Magnum, the .32 ACP was soon overtaken by a better and stronger cartridge. This was the .380 ACP that was introduced in 1908. Well, some say that the .380 ACP itself might be rather lackluster when it comes to performance, and sure beats the .32 ACP. The .25 Auto. The saying goes that any gun beats having a pointy stick or nothing at all. However, the .25 Auto is the exception to that rule. There have been stories of people being hit by it multiple times and then calmly strolling over to the shooter and giving them a good beating. How much that is true, might be questionable. However, that the 45 grain bullet with its 800 feet per second of a .25 Auto is even less powerful than a .22 Magnum, says it all. Developed in 1905 by John Browning, the man who gave us the 1894 Winchester rifle, 1911 pistol, 45 auto, and 50 BMG, it was another solution to a problem nobody had and nobody wanted. But John Browning can be forgiven, and this mistaken development better be forgotten. There you have it, the 6 handgun cartridges that will soon enter the realm of obsolescence. Thanks for watching. Consider giving us a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. See you in the next episode, and as always, have fun.